we are going to kick off by having the panelists introduce themselves, starting at the far side.
Hi, I'm Dave Meeker from Isobar, and I run our international innovation efforts via a program called Now Lab. We've got 70 offices around the world, 16 labs. We focus in different markets on different things. Here in the US, instead of making people want things, in many cases we try to make things people want by using all of the data and intelligence that agencies have and apply that back to product and service design.
Dave, thanks.
Great. I'm Dave Batista. I'm a founding partner and chief creative officer of Beam here in Boston. We're probably best known for our work over the years with Mini as their digital agency. Also do a lot of work in the financial services and healthcare space. And yeah, I'll turn it over to you.
Rob Griffin, ex-Havas guy, similar to Dave on the end here, doing the big global agency thing. I'm now Chief Innovation Officer of a small little 50-person shop called Almighty here in Boston. And I run innovation.
Great. Well, thanks for the introductions. We are tight for time, so we want to get right into a lead-off question. And then you'll see your panelists speaking to each other and maybe engaging you as an audience. We want to have some time for Q&A. We have 15 minutes, so we want to keep this as informative as possible. Real quick, so each of you run innovation in your respective organizations in different ways. And some of you have founded labs within your ecosystems or within your firms to spur innovation. I'd be curious to hear you talk more about how these labs are functioning to drive an innovation culture internally and also deliver better products and services externally. So what's the role of the labs that you created that we're aware of in your bios, but perhaps initiatives that you're on top of now as well? And how are they influencing internal innovation as well as external product and service innovation where they intersect with AR and VR technologies? Please.
Sure. I think you just gave me a great opportunity to pimp my talk that's coming up later. So I'll shamelessly do that. But I swear this is an answer to your question, too. So we're working on an AR-based employee onboarding experience. So this is a way that you can come in and learn about the people and the stories behind them, come in and learn about the spaces in our office and the stories behind those spaces so that you feel a little bit more connected to the people and the spaces in which you're working, and we kind of collapse that feeling and that time of getting comfortable where you work. And what this is doing for us, though, is it's giving us a lever to really kind of pressure test AR as a technology for storytelling and kind of work through a lot of the experience design details of this so that we can then turn around and bring those learnings to clients. So the short answer is our own environments and our own people, are always our best test cases, assuming we can kind of make that connection from a relevancy standpoint and make sure that what we're actually doing internally might be more broadly applicable outside.
Is AR and VR innovation internally through these labs and doing sort of experimental design and how you're onboarding, is it pressuring the organization, and this is for everyone on the panel, pressuring the organization to evolve current competencies or develop new competencies internally? Could you speak to that a little bit?
I mean, I would throw it out there that our labs are not what makes us innovative. I think our hiring process looks for people who are curious, risk takers, and want to innovate. Because of that culture that we have, that bred the labs. Because it was a way for people when they weren't working on client work to have the opportunities to explore and do new things. So if someone comes to me and says, I really want to learn blank, or we see a new technology like AR, you can't find a lot of user experience designers out there that are competent in designing AR experiences. Where are you going to find competency? We're going to buy hardware and create use cases and things, and you guys will collectively, globally, work together to design and figure this stuff out. And then we bring that to clients. So it's sort of like our own internal investment in what's coming next, so that we have our act together, because I do not ever want to get into a situation where I go to a client and with a shiny object, we scratch the surface off the shiny object, and if it doesn't come off, then we bring it to the client. We don't want to fail.
How much are clients bringing up the whole idea of AR, VR? Are they coming to you, any of you guys, and saying, you know what, we really want to do something in AR, VR, or is it more coming from you guys to say, hey, we think this is how you can have a big impact with your particular brand?
I think from my perspective, it's something people talk about all the time, and I like the the shiny scratch sort of test that you talked about, because like you said, innovations, whether you're at a large company and a lab is handy because you can pull it out of the main sort of standardized workflow, or I'm at a small company now, so we don't have labs like I did at Havas, or you have, because we're a small little company and everybody just accepts changes, they're only constant in their job. The challenge in that when you're doing the innovation is the client comes to you and they want to do something like this, but really how am I enhancing and augmenting that user experience? Just because I can doesn't mean I should. So sometimes to be innovative, you almost have to be anti-innovation and say no sometimes, like this is not the right thing to do. This is creepy, or it's slow, or it doesn't add any value to it. I don't know how many people here in the audience have had a bad AR experience where you go look at it and it's just a website and a screen that I'm controlling with my head moving around, and it's like, all right, that's cool for a second, and then it's pretty stupid and it's not worth the time.
Yeah, I think that takes us back to Juan's comment about the unplugging, to hear him talk about unplugging and this balance between these virtual and augmented worlds that we are striving towards and excited about, and having time for relationships and offline time and time for organic Darwinian human experience.
And see, in that scenario, I was going to say you're adding value by giving something back to somebody. We're working on a project now. You think about companies like L'Oreal, Estee Lauder, sometimes innovation in AR, it actually comes from putting together multiple different platforms, and sometimes the most innovative thing can be the simplest thing. In this experience now, we're working with beauty products where in your app now we can add new functionality into that's designed by Almighty from a UX, UI perspective, usability. An AR company comes in and provides the functionality. So if I use the camera on my phone in my Estee Lauder app, for example, and I mouse over the Estee Lauder ad with the hot model in it, I'm now watching a behind the scenes photo shoot with a little video, and I can get makeup tips and beauty tips. And that the whole time is tracking which products and which models and which magazines I saw those ads in. And the next time I'm walking through Macy's and I go by the Estee Lauder kiosk, the beacon picks up the phone, knows which products I've looked at, and it's like, why don't you come over here for a free makeover, or come get some free eyeliner. And so not super sophisticated, not super high end, but I'm adding value to the consumer, both from an entertainment and information perspective, and then giving them coupons on the other end and taking print advertising and then tying that to foot traffic walking through a retail store. It's not super sophisticated, not super sexy, but very valuable to the end user. I'm giving them something in return for being able to track them.
Sure.
I think to that point, it's like I see a lot of clients look at AR and VR and first don't know the difference between the two. So we do a lot of education. Where we come, we set stuff up, we walk them through and try to explain augmented versus virtual and how these things will eventually probably come together. To your point, on a user journey, we really have to think about how these technologies impact someone across all the different touch points as a consumer. Maybe it doesn't make any sense for a consumer app. Maybe it makes more sense for the people behind the makeup counter to have some augmented experience. The biggest challenge that I have with brands adopting anything new like this is it's a chicken or the egg problem with content. So until there's enough headsets in the marketplace or enough, because AR is not new, right? We can use a tablet, but there's friction. I have to have your app installed on the tablet. It's the same problem we see over and over and over. That's why beacons haven't really taken off. I will invest money in creating content for this platform when the platform reaches some level of ubiquity, but the platform will never reach some level of ubiquity until consumers have some reason to go purchase hardware because there's great content for them. So I believe that we're at a point now where we need some leaders, whether it be Intel or NVIDIA or someone, to go and put a flag in the ground and say, we're going to transform this industry like Sony did, I guess, with CD-ROMs. I was a kid in the 80s, but I know in the 70s, Sony made computers and stuff, and in the 90s, Sony published movies and TV and music. Who's going to be the person in this next realm of experience?
Well, I mean, if we just sit back, the porn guys and the gamers will figure it out for us. They pioneered everything else in our life, from DVDs to streaming to pop-unders to pop-ups to tracking and retargeting. So if we sit back long enough, the porn and the gamers will figure it out.
Yeah, I think it's a situation where sort of the opportunities are very unevenly distributed right now. So if you think about something like you're selling a car in a showroom, the opportunity to pick up a tablet when you walk in to that showroom, hold it up to the car, tap on the hood of the car, the engine flies out, you can pivot it, you get a story told about how fun it is to drive that car. Those use cases, we think, are fairly credible currently because the user, or the consumer in this case, is already in an exploratory mindset and they have a lot of hunger to learn about that thing. But what gets tricky is, the worst case scenario is the dreaded sort of QR code friction barrier where, even just the act of pulling out a phone, firing up an app, is enormously prohibitive in a marketing context. I mean, that's a really big ask, even if you have the most wonderful AR experience associated with a print ad or an out-of-home ad.
Sure.
So I think to the point that these guys were making earlier, I think there need to be some really kind of heroic executions of this that kind of turn people onto its potential. I personally don't think we're going to see any kind of broad-based takeoff of AR from a marketing standpoint until AR kind of achieves its potential as the way that humans interface with computers. I mean, at the point at which these little devices go away and it's all just sitting in front of us, of course, then, incredible opportunity for all of us in this space. But until then, we'll have little moments of excellence and excitement and execution.
I think from a marketing perspective too, going along your lines there, I think one way to think about it that when I talk to clients as well is sort of managing expectations and what are the business outcomes that are going to come out the other side of this thing if we go down this road. It really depends on what you want to do, because there's simple, innovative executions that you can do now that'll enhance an experience, and then there's more deeper down the road. I want to do this VR execution for the publicity of it, for the learning of it, for all these things. But I just have to accept that that's going to be a smaller slice of people that are going to do it, and then really sort of manage your expectations, accordingly as you try and execute something like this, and thinking about how broad is this innovation going to hit people, and what is my investment in, what do I really expect on the other end of that and the outcome.
We are 1 minute out, a little bit more than a minute and a half out. It's not much time. We could go so far with this discussion, even just following up on where relationship in a customer journey, where is this spectrum between relational and augmented and virtual and the ethics. One question I would like to hear from the audience on, you have agency leaders here that are driving innovation at their respective global firms. Do any of you have questions about or concerns about the ethics of where information's going and privacy issues in this as we enter a new world, this fourth platform world, where even more information about the consumer, each of us, is going to be available. So I'd open it for questions about ethics or other questions from the audience. We might be able to take one, maybe two if we're really tight about it. So any questions from the audience?
And please do come up to these mics, because the session's being...
There's a mic right there.
Hey, I have an agency, and we haven't actually done any AR executions yet, but just wondering about the cost factor. When you're looking at doing AR and VR versus a simple video project, what's the difference in how is selling it through different?
Yeah, I mean, the process takes a little bit longer. You're trying to create something from scratch. It's not a standardized format, just whipping off a vertical video that you can smash into Facebook, right? There's some sort of consistencies and ad standards there. I think when you get into this, I think that my only comment would be is that, it's a longer process to make sure you have that lead time sort of going into it and figuring out what they want out of the other end of it. It just takes a little bit longer, but in terms of raw cost, I mean, you could get a 360 video and go run around here and take some great video. That part's not that expensive. It's the process of selling it and setting it up right, I think, is the more important part of the equation.
I think we get into cost explosion when you start not controlling scope. Man, I've had clients look at me and go, well, what's Unity? Right? Like, it's a different development platform. Many small agencies don't have Unity developers or C# or whatever developers that can work in a game engine. And so I've had people in the ad industry, right, like sister companies of mine go, well, how do we shoot that content? What kind of cameras do we use? And like, it's rendered, right? Real-time rendering is very different than shooting rendering and then playing back.
Thanks for the question.
As a parting thought
Please.
for the room, if anybody wasn't at CES or hadn't been reading the trades on it, you talked about pulling out the phone and trying to scan a code and the barrier that creates. If anybody hasn't paid attention to the news, one of the biggest things coming out of CES this year was voice activation and control. And if anybody hasn't played with Alexa and what Amazon's trying to do with voice activation, and same with what Google's trying to do with Google Home, where this doesn't come out anymore, it's just picked up by beacons, and I can just say what I want it to track and what I don't want it to track, I think is going to have a big influence on the adoption of AR, VR type things when I can start controlling it with my voice and not having to try and touch or pull my phone out or turn my head down or any of these things. So
Thanks, Rob.
check that out.
Dave, Rob, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our pleasure.
Audience, thank you. Brian, thank you.